We are back. Today on F1 Brake Check, we'll be getting you ready for this weekend's return to U.S. soil in Corey and I's backyard of Austin, Texas. We'll preview the race and talk about the latest news and rumors next on F1 Brake Check.
Welcome. You are listening to F1 Brake Check, the epic podcast for all things Formula One, where we discuss technology, history, news, and perspective. With your hosts, Scott Vick and Corey Breen.
And we're back with F1 Brake Check.
Before we talk about the race, let's talk about our weekend.
This weekend, Scott and I are monthly physically hanging out because we hang out at least once a week. Sometimes it's 2 or 3 times a week, just depending on what we have going on the podcast. But at least once a week, we're virtually hanging out because we live, 2 hours from each other? Maybe an hour and a half, something like that. Once a month, we get together, smoke cigars, as people know already, and typically have a drink or two. This last time we went to Haystacks. It's a really good hamburger place. It's a beer McKinney. Do you remember the beer name?
I do. It was done by the Tups Brewery in McKinney, Texas, and it was called the Backyard Bock. And
if anybody out there likes Shiner, try this beer. Shiner's okay in my book. I'm more of a darker beer fan, but this one was really good, especially from a Bock.
It's more of a traditional box style, unlike Shiner Bock. So if you like Shiner Bock, you'll like it. If you don't like Shiner Bock, give it a try anyway, and I'll bet you'll like it.
Yeah, exactly. That's a great way to phrase it.
Yes.
So we had a cigar, and it was one of the cigars that you were actually really excited about. The gauge on it was really good. It smoked well. What was it?
The Grand Habano Anniversary. As a lot of people know, I've been smoking cigars for over 30 years. There was a period where, at least in the US, where they became immensely popular around the mid to late 90s. And there was a lot of people producing some really, really awful cigars with some really, really pretty bands. And then they would slap a premium price on it, and everybody thought they were great. And I got burned a few too many times, and I have a tendency to stick to traditional brands whenever possible. And I had not had a Grand Habano in quite a while, and it was quite the treat.
Yeah, and it was actually my first time having one. So I was blown away, honestly, because it was only $16 a stick at industrial stores. Just really good price for the stick. It was a good 2.5 hour smoke. It really rivals, for me at least, it really rivals the Byron. That's how good.
Yeah,
and the Byron, for people that don't know, the Byron is anywhere from $35 per stick on up. Sometimes they can go up to $50, $60 a stick. So really expensive, great, but very expensive.
Yeah, agreed.
And then that was really our night. We just
exactly.
It was very chill inside of industrial. We just sat around. Shockingly enough, we talked F1 80% of the time.
Yes,
something like that. So people that have been listening to the podcast for a while knows that industrial is actually the birthplace of Brake Check. That's where Scott had thought up of, hey, we talk about F1 a lot. Why don't we put it on a podcast? So
yes, exactly.
That birthed this podcast that you're listening to now.
Yes, absolutely. Got to give huge props to industrial, because they, like Corey said, they truly were the birthplace of where this whole idea came from. And so just every time we get a chance to mention them, I love to do so.
Definitely.
All right, enough about our weekend. Let's move on to the race.
This weekend, we are back in Austin, back on U.S. soil, the amazing Circuit of the Americas. Corey, how excited are you to have the circus back in town?
Oh yeah, I wish I would be down there, but work circumstances and such, we had to stay up here. So, but yeah, I'm super excited. I love this track. I'm not the biggest fan of Miami's. Who's to say about Las Vegas? But this is definitely one of my favorite tracks. It's very technical. It has the hill country, and Austin has some of the not quite hills that Austin has, but it definitely has some elevation to it. Fantastic track, especially curve 1, because you're going up that hill and then you have a really tight turn. Oh, just so good. What about you?
I'm right there with you. I don't know when was the last time you were at the track. It is just a phenomenal track. I've gotten a chance to actually drive it both in person and on the simulator. And it is a track that is just mind-blowing. Like Corey said, it's being, in the hill country, which for those of you who don't know, Corey and I are in the Dallas-Fort Worth area. So we're like 3 hours away from Austin, due south of us. But the track is just fantastic. Turn one is almost like driving the corkscrew at Laguna Seca in reverse, where you come up the hill, but instead of coming down the hill through the corkscrew, it's like going up the hill, and you go into the blind first turn and then back down the hill into a very fast set of high-speed turns, culminating in a very, very tight chicane. So it's like Corey said, it is a very, very technical track, which is just when you get it right, it is just amazing. But it's also produces some really great racing because you have such a dichotomy of parts of the track. So you've got parts of the track which are very high speed, but then it'll go into a series of very tight, slower corners before spitting you back out into faster section. It produces some just amazing racing. So I'm super excited for this weekend. I love Austin. As far as I'm concerned, it is right up there with Spa and Monza and Silverstone as the great. Oh, it is in my mind, and not just because I'm an American, but because they did such a fantastic job when they designed and laid out the track and built it, that they were really going for a very old world circuit type feel with it. And because of that, that's part of what I think makes it such an iconic track that is right up there with some of the other great racetracks of the world. One aside, though, that I do have to mention, though, that is kind of a fun fact, that they are also, because it being a Formula One track, and I'm sure that the other track, I haven't driven any other tracks other than in the simulator, but in real life, because it being a F1 track, all the parts of the track that are involved in the safety, like the barriers and the tire barriers and things like that, are all built, of course, to F1 spec, which also means they are excruciatingly expensive. That fun fact that if a civilian on the track damages any part of the guardrails or the barriers, it is $1,000 per foot payable by the person who damages it.
Wow.
Yeah. So if you ever get a chance to drive COTA, I would definitely, if they offer you track insurance, take it. It is money well spent. Just on that off chance that you so much scrape a little piece of the barriers, it is excruciatingly expensive. So fun little fact.
That's good. Yeah, I never would have known that, right? That's awesome.
Yeah. So let's move on to the news. First off, did you see about Piastri?
Honestly, I'm just now reading that. Doesn't shock me in the least.
Okay, so for those of you who don't know, McLaren, in a very unshocking move, extended Piastri's contract to 2027, which locks up both him and Lando for a number of years into the future, because I believe Lando's now locked up through 2025 or 2026, and Piastri is now locked up through 2027, which is a very, very smart move by McLaren.
One of the easiest decisions that you could make besides signing Lewis Hamilton. Besides that, this is one of the easier decisions to make.
This is right up there with hiring Adrian Newey.
Good one.
So yeah, like you said, it is definitely a no-brainer. And like I said, this takes and locks up both drivers for very long term, because if they were on much shorter contracts, I guarantee you that other teams would have come, if they haven't already come a calling, trying to, sniffing around, trying to gauge Lando's or Oscar's interest in making a move. This will kind of keep them at bay. So now all McLaren has to do, because I guarantee you, like we've discussed before in the past, I guarantee you there are also performance clauses in the contracts. It was very smart of McLaren to make sure that they have them locked up for long term, but now they're going to have to produce a car that is worthy of their talent and worthy of getting those long-term contracts.
Yeah, because just like what we said in the beginning of the year when McLaren was doing horribly, they have to do something for Norris, and now they have to do something for Piastri, or you have two extraordinarily talented drivers. They're not going to stay around. They will. No. There's going to be tons of offers here really soon, because Lewis is locked up for 2 years, but and the end of 2 years, more than likely he's out. He's going to more than likely retire. If
Yeah.
not, he's not going to be with Mercedes for 2 years after the 2 years, more than likely, unless something dramatic happens. And then who else do we have? Who knows about Checo? We'll talk about Checo here in just a minute. And there's several others that will be shifting around, so to speak. So there's going to be a spot for them. If they want to go somewhere, a spot will be made. I mean, hell, who knows about Stroll?
Yeah, exactly. I was just getting ready to say the exact same thing, is that if Lando or Oscar were suddenly available, would Lawrence Stroll be willing to put his son on the sideline in order to grab one of these drivers? I think that he would have to really take a good, long, hard look at it. As much as Fernando is the Iron Man, he's still not going to be around forever. Eventually, he will retire. So you've got two possible seats right there. Like you said, there's a possibility of Lewis moving on, and going into retirement in 2 years. You also have possibility of, like you said, of Checo. You also have the possibility of Sainz calling it a day. This will keep the other top teams from being able to sniff around, and will keep them at McLaren for, at least for the foreseeable future, which I think is McLaren is definitely on an upward trajectory. And I mean, as they've already proven, I think that next year's car should be on equal footing with the Red Bull, if not really, and if not, it'll be really, really close. And as long as they can continue the kind of development that they've done with this year's car into next year's car, I think they're going to have a really, really competitive car. And I think that they're going to be a team to watch next year.
Yeah, definitely. But again, with all that being said, just like you noted earlier, if McLaren can keep that car competitive, otherwise you have two very talented drivers that will be shopping around, because like you said, more than likely there's some type of performance clause in their contract for McLaren. You have to give who knows, whatever their performance metrics are for the car itself. So it'll be interesting. It definitely will keep McLaren making sure that they have top-notch engineering and that they have that car spec'd out as much as they can.
Yes, absolutely. So, and did you see Max's comments about the McLaren?
No, what did he say?
No, he basically said that McLaren right now is very, very much nipping at Red Bull's heels. Those weren't his exact words, but I'm paraphrasing. I'm basically summarizing what he said. But he said that they have definitely been the surprise of the second half of the season, and he sees them being a real competitor to Red Bull.
No doubt about it. I mean, look at last race with Qatar. It was amazing. And quite frankly, I think that Norris was really, and I said this on the last podcast, but I really think Norris was dealt a bad hand, because had he been allowed to move past Piastri, I think that given enough time, I think that Lando could have at least bridged the gap. So they have a fast enough car, no doubt about it. If Max makes one mistake, or he has to take a penalty or anything like that, those two are up on podium.
They're ready to pounce.
Winning the race. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. And I mean, and Piastri won the sprint outright. I mean, it wasn't, something that got.
Yep.
Yeah, it was not a gimme. It was not a gift. He was bang on from the outset. He had the field covered. Probably one of the best cars. This is probably the second best car on the grid right now. The end of the last rules iteration, when they made the switch from Honda over to Mercedes power units, they started to, make some real noise. But then when the aerodynamic rules changed last year, they admit on their own that they went in the wrong direction. Preseason testing, they seemed to be on the mark, but then once we got to first race of the season, things kind of dropped off, went in the wrong direction. And this year they already knew that they were going to be on the back foot from the beginning, but they knew that they were in the process of coming up with the B-spec car, and that the B-spec car was going to be significantly better. And we have seen that ever since the B-spec car came online at Austria. It has just been lights out for McLaren.
I'll never forget that first race. I was looking at Max, and I think I was more shocked than Max was seeing these two McLarens next to him. I'm like, what has happened? What just happened? How is McLaren? Yeah. I couldn't believe it. And Max was actually having to shove off Piastri at that point, and Lando took lead for, I don't know, 3 or 4 laps. I forget how many laps but it was amazing to me how much he got out of that race, or out of
Yeah.
the car. I'm sorry, out of the car.
Yes, absolutely. So good on them, and I really expect they will continue that, because I think that Coda is definitely a track that is going to
Oh,
very
yeah.
much suit. And the weather outlook for this weekend, the weather should be
Beautiful.
excellent. I think that's the one thing that they'll have going for them, is as long as we don't have any other intermittent conditions or anything, and they can get the setup right, I expect them to go really, really well.
They're another one that I'm very excited about this weekend.
Yes, absolutely.
So Checo rumors.
Oh my gosh.
So many out there now.
Yes. So you
Somebody.
go ahead. You start with what you know, and then
Okay.
I will put in my 2 cents.
Yeah, so I've heard, I think most people have heard by now, is that Checo's retiring in Mexico and everything like that. And then I've heard other reports saying that that's complete rubbish. There's no way that's going to happen. That somebody took something Checo said off color and basically ran with it. So that's how we got to the point of him retiring. I just don't see a man of Checo's talent and caliber retiring when he's this good. Yes, he's had some slumps, and like Scott said last 2 podcasts, I think in a row actually, that Red Bull isn't investing enough in him right now because they wanted Max to get that championship. Now that he has the championship, let's see how Austin does. Let's see how Mexico goes. I'm just like Scott has said, I'm betting that he's going to look back to Checo form in the next 2 races. What about you?
Yeah, no, I couldn't agree more, because apparently, according to the rumor, he was already told in Japan that his services weren't going to be needed next year, which some people saw as the reason why he didn't go very well in Japan, why he had a really bad weekend in Qatar, is that, because he's already given up, which I don't see it. I mean, I could be completely wrong, and I could be, but I'm going to make the bold prediction now, though, that rumor was complete bunk.
Yeah.
He was probably told something in Japan along the lines of like what I was saying, in the fact that we're putting more of our effort behind Max just to help him secure the championship. And once that's done, then we will resume focus.
To go back on what you were saying, even if he were to say somebody said, hey, at the end of 2023, you're gone, I don't see Checo being the kind of guy of, well, screw you guys, I'm not going to do any good. I just don't see him racing like that. I see him doing the reverse, him being the racing driver that we know him as, and showing and proving how much better he is. Not somebody that's going to sulk around and say, oh, poor woe is me. I don't see that in Checo at all.
No, I totally agree. That's exactly what I see. He would not back off. In fact, he would be, because there's only maybe possibly 2 seats, that are still kind of up in the air, that seem to be more or less locked down, but could become open, that Checo would be like, okay, if you don't want me, then I'm going to stick it to you by pushing as hard as I can to make a name for myself, so that when you do let me go, I've got options and everything. So no, I don't see Checo slacking off for any reason. And the other thing too, though, is that he is not going to, even if the team has said that they're not going to retain his services next year and they're going to cancel his contract, he's not going to do it at Mexico. They might make the announcement that he's not coming back next year at Mexico, so that he does it on his home turf in front of his sponsor and everything. But I guarantee you, he will see out the rest of the season. Even if he were not to stay in Red Bull, I see this being much more like a Albon or Gasly move, where they might swap drivers between Red Bull and AlphaTauri. So they might like promote Danny Rick up to the Red Bull team and put Checo back in the AlphaTauri, teamed up with Yuki. You're right. I mean, Checo has way too much talent and way too much upside for them to just ditch him.
Yeah.
I would see it being more of a driver swap than anything, if something were to happen for next year. Moving on, let's talk about the FIA investigating Lewis Hamilton for crossing the track during the race. So apparently, I was not even aware of this, that apparently a few years back, the FIA instituted a rule that drivers are not allowed to cross the track during a race, even if it's under yellow flags, safety car conditions, anything like that. So him walking from the gravel trap across the track and jumping over the barricade to walk down to the pit lane, that apparently that was a big no-no. And apparently the FIA is looking at finding Lewis for violating that rule, which I'm going to go on record right now as saying that is stupid.
Hold on. You're talking FIA. Are you surprised?
Okay, never mind. I'm going to walk that back then. Yeah, I mean, it's like at that point they were already under the safety car. It was safe for him to. He's an adult. He's a professional racing driver. He's
Right?
going to know. It's not like he was trying to cross it under green flag conditions or even a virtual safety car where cars are still going to be circulating, albeit at reduced speed. They would still be, if they were still circulating the track, that would be one thing. But at this point, the safety car had already been deployed. They already, it's like he knew when it was safe to cross. And for them to fine him, I think would be just a travesty. This would be one of those really, really stupid penalties but then again, the FIA has become known for those stupid penalties.
Yeah. Every time you say stupid in FIA, I hear like the same thing.
Yeah. So true. So
I'm
very,
sorry,
very
FIA.
true.
I'm not really, but
No, sorry, not sorry.
So many of these stupid things that you're scratching your head like, why are you doing this? It makes no sense. All right. Yeah. Okay.
So let's move on.
Yeah.
All right. So did you see the news about Alpine? Just got a big, and when I say big, I'm talking $200 million infusion in cash from a investment group that includes, among others, American football players Travis Kelce and Patrick Mahomes. And for those of you who haven't been living in a cave for the last few weeks, that apparently Travis Kelce and Taylor Swift are now dating. And so this has been like, I don't know about in the rest of the world, but in the US, this has been like huge news. The fact that she's shown up for a couple of his games and everything. And so,
I have to admit this. I've been living under a rock because I have no idea who that guy is.
Okay, so Travis Kelce is a tight end for the American football team, the Kansas City Chiefs, who just won the Super Bowl last year. So he is a tight end, and Patrick Mahomes is the quarterback for the Kansas City Chiefs. And apparently, like I said, a couple weeks ago, Taylor Swift showed up at, there'd been rumors. And the only reason why I bring this up is because preseason, there was the rumors that Taylor Swift was dating Fernando Alonso.
Wow.
And so, yes. And so now, and then she shows up at one of the Kansas City Chiefs games a couple weeks ago in Kansas City. And then, like, it was either a week later or 2 weeks later when the Kansas City Chiefs were playing the New York Giants in New York. Apparently, she came to that game. She hung out with, Travis's mom, the whole thing. And it was like apparently a whole celebrity onslaught for that particular game that she showed up, because apparently Hugh Jackman and Ryan Reynolds and Blake Lively, Ryan Reynolds' wife, was apparently there. It seemed to be that during the NBC broadcast, which really ticked off a lot of people because they were focusing so much on who was in that suite as opposed to what was going on the field, and even Mike Tirico, who was the announcer for that particular game, even he seemed to be kind of obsessed with what was going on in that suite at the time. So made for a very interesting time. So yes,
it is more interesting than American football.
Sometimes yes. Sometimes yes.
Just real quick, let's go back. So you were saying that rumor was that she was dating Alonso. Let's be honest, bud. I don't know Kelce, as I said before, but that's a pretty significant downgrade going from Alonso over to this other dude. Come on.
Yeah, absolutely. That's your news on the Alpine investment. So apparently huge influx of cash coming in, basically takes care of a season for the team, depending upon how they spend their money and everything. That could literally pay for an entire season underneath the cost cap. Good on Alpine. And let's hope that fusion of cash takes and brings back a little more consistent form with Alpine.
At the very least, let's just hope that the cars don't break down.
Yes, absolutely.
All right, moving on to, Danny Rick is coming back.
Yes, Austin is going to see the return of Danny Rick to the car.
Should we have a quick video to Danny Rick on showing how to crash and not break your hands?
Yes.
Give him a quick tutorial on how
Yes.
to crash properly.
Yes, absolutely. Take your hands off the wheel. That's why, that's why you see most of the time it's like when the driver's going to crash, first thing he does is takes his hands off his wheels and crosses them across his chest. Now, in Danny Rick's,
Oh, I know. I'm totally.
Yeah, I mean, in his defense, that was such, as we talked about when it happened,
yeah,
it was such a weird, slow speed crash that really didn't look like anything. And so it was just one of those freak things where it took, and I can see where he really didn't have, I'm sure that he probably thought this isn't going to be that bad. He didn't think, or he thought that maybe he might have been able to save it before he actually went into the barrier. It was just one of those weird things that I don't think that he saw it being that big of an issue, or he didn't have time to react. I'm not sure what, but because it was such a freak accident, I can't totally say that he goofed up by not taking his hands off the wheel. I'm so excited to see him back. Like everybody else, we've all seen the footage of him driving the car in Nashville. That's kind of getting people pumped up for the race this weekend, and him just having what looked like an absolute blast of a time in Nashville. You got a pair of custom cowboy boots that said Danny Rick on the side of them and everything. And so he looked like he looked really good in the car, albeit, yes, he was just doing a few donuts and a couple of 3/4 speed laps and things like that. But he still looked good. Really looking forward to his return. I'm hoping to really see him go well this weekend.
Yeah, same here.
And we all know that it's a track that he absolutely loves. He absolutely loves Austin. He loves Coda. It really should be fun to watch him return to the car this weekend.
Super excited.
So super excited about this weekend. So you think we ought to bring it home?
Yeah, I think we're ready.
Okay, then. So I will be coming to you again in a few days, go into the history of the track at Coda, because with the track's been, this will be what I think the 12th or 15th year. We'll have a new tech corner talking about the Formula One technology, and we'll go over all the news and rumors and all the happenings from the track. So, Corey, any last thoughts?
I'm all good. I think we're ready to go. Yeah.
All right, then. So let's go ahead and put it in the barn and call it a day. So for Corey Brune, I'm Scott Vick, and we'll see you next time on F1 Brake Check.
Thank you for listening to F1 Brake Check. If you have enjoyed what you heard, don't miss a single episode by hitting that subscribe button in your favorite podcatcher. Also, help us grow by sharing us with your friends and fellow F1 fans. We value your feedback and passion, so please take a moment to review our podcast. Your reviews help us grow and improve, and it means the world to us. Share your thoughts, rate us, and let us know how we can make the show experience even better. F1 Brake Check is a production of Brake Check Media. For your hosts Scott Vick and Corey Brune, until next time, stay inside track limits, and try not to pitch it in the kitty litter.